So I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about my friend Nick. Nick and I graduated high school together in 2017. We were in the same homeroom from 5th grade all the way up until graduation. He played football. He was an all-around great guy. But then June 2018 comes around, and this picture is plastered all over my hometown. It was devastating. We're all wondering, where did Nick go? What happened? And unfortunately, a couple weeks later, his body was found a few counties over, and he had overdosed on opioids. And it was devastating. Our whole community could not believe it. We said, how did this happen? How is Nick addicted to opioids? And how could it happen to our community? And it was shocking, but we weren't alone, because in 2018, 9.9 million Americans also struggled with the misuse of opioids, which is a crazy number, and it almost feels overwhelming because how do we deal with such a heavy epidemic like that? And there are many different ways, but in my speech, I want to focus on education rather than heavy regulations and just building up doctors and patients alike to make sure that we can all work on this issue together. So in my speech, I'm going to begin with a few causes, overprescribing by doctors and an undereducated public, as well as ending on some solutions that focus on education. So first, when you hear the word opioid, you may be thinking about the illegal drug heroin. You may also be thinking about the illegal drug fentanyl, which is a synthetic drug. By the way, this small amount could kill you in an instant, which is just incredible. But today, my speech is going to be about legal opioids, ones that doctors prescribe every day. There are things that you may or may not have heard of, such as codeine, morphine, Oxycontin, Vicodin, Percocet, hydrocodone, many, many painkillers. So, as far as prescribing is concerned, there are many different reasons you may be prescribed. You may be prescribed as a cancer patient. You may be prescribed for your wisdom teeth. You may even be prescribed after giving birth because your body undergoes so much trauma. And as far as regulating this goes, it's more on a state-to-state basis, but the CDC provides prescribing outlines for dealing with treatment of chronic pain. However, the jumble of all the words on the screen that I do not expect you to read in no way helps doctors understand on a situational basis. And Thomas McClellan puts this issue perfectly. He says that physicians are trying to balance their duty to relieve pain in individual patients with their obligation to prevent broader public health problems of addiction and overdose death. So physicians are just struggling to keep up with, do I prescribe this to my patient or will they potentially be addicted? So there's also an issue with public misunderstanding. There are so many different reasons that you could be prescribed, like I said before. And if you are denying that you could be addicted, Dr. Yanovinsky believes that that makes you at risk. It's just this type of ignorance to addiction that keeps levels growing and growing higher and higher. But you also don't have to be prescribed to be at risk of addiction, which is incredible. In a study done by Naslin Khan for the Journal of the American Medical Association, opioid prescriptions to family members were associated with overdose among individuals who did not receive the opioid prescriptions. So what does this mean? This means that, let's say your mother had a knee surgery and she got an opioid for her pain. And she maybe took a couple pills and then put it in her medicine cabinet and never thought of it again. That medicine is just sitting there becoming more and more dangerous because it poses a risk of others taking that drug. And data supports this too. In 2018, the National Survey on Drug Use and Health, of those 9.9 million Americans that misused opioids, 36%, this blue section, got that drug from a prescription from a doctor, whereas the gray, the 51%, either were given that prescription by a friend or relative or stole it from a friend or relative, which is just incredible. So we understand that opioids are bad, and our doctors are giving us this medication. But we can't just jump to blaming doctors. That is not the best way to do this because they are highly qualified and honestly under a lot of pressure. But we can't jump to completely banning opioids either because people genuinely rely on them day to day for chronic pain. And if you got your wisdom teeth removed, I'm not sure you'd be really happy with me taking away your medication because the experience that pain hurts. So, like I said at the beginning, my focus is going to be on education rather than heavy regulation of opioids. The first things first is to make it easier on doctors. We can't feasibly regulate them. It's just not possible to go on a situation-to-situation basis. So instead, we're going to look to Vermont. They're using what's called a hub and spoke model. So if you look at the bicycle wheel, you have the hub in the middle, and all the individual spokes connect out and hold the rim together. So Dr. Keith Humphreys has developed this model in Vermont's hub and spoke. Basically what this means is physicians are the spokes of the wheel. They are dealing with these individual patients along the rim, and let's say they're considering an opioid treatment. They're connected back to the hub of experts. We're going to work on a case-to-case basis with these patients to make sure that opioids are right in their circumstances. So they're taking in previous medical history, previous experience with opioids, instead of just completely generalizing, as regulations would do that. However, it's not just enough to make sure doctors are supported by educated experts, we also need to be making sure that our community is well informed. The most successful example of this comes from New Jersey. The Partnership for a Drug-Free New Jersey, run by Dr. Itzhak Yanovitsky. So he is a researcher. He's researched opioids for many years. He was called in by the government specifically to study how to persuade a community that they are at risk, which is incredible in the frame of our classroom. He's literally studying how to persuade risk without overwhelming you. Because I could be giving this speech and overwhelming you with all these statistics, how you could be addicted, but he says that that doesn't work. He's holding community town halls that uplift the community and bring us all together and make us feel like we can deal with this together. He's also holding community disposal drives to make sure that these illegal medications are properly disposed of. But the Partnership for a Drug-Free New Jersey doesn't end there. It also introduced what's called the Patient Opioid Notification Law. Now this isn't a specific law, so this is going to get a little tricky. It's basically an awareness for other state legislatures. So if you look at the blue, that is 80% of America, which 80% does not legally require doctors to tell you of the addictive qualities of opioids. So if you look at Tennessee, let's say you go to get your wisdom teeth removed, your doctor is not legally bound to tell you that that medication is highly addictive, which is terrifying. So what New Jersey is doing is they're saying to other states, look, you don't need to be heavily regulating doctors when they should and shouldn't prescribe. You just need to be ensuring that these doctors are telling their patients that they're addictive. It's not working to regulate them on a heavy basis. You just need to make sure that they're communicating this information. So what does this look like? Well, in the New Jersey Legal Code, this is only a short paragraph of the many, many words that they provided on this. But what's important to take out is they're emphasizing that a practitioner shall discuss with the patient the risks of addiction and overdose associated with opioid drugs. They're also providing alternative treatments and reasons for treatment, which patients often don't get. Rhode Island also provides a lot more words on this topic in their Code of Regulations. However, what I love about them is that they're emphasizing patient education, informed consent, explaining the risks, and showing a requirement for conversation between doctors and patients. So, in my speech, I've talked about the causes. Doctors are prescribing dangerous medications, and we don't understand that there's a potential risk of addiction to the medicines that we're putting in our body. However, like I said, we cannot jump to completely regulating. It doesn't work, and it's not feasible. We need to instead we need to educate our doctors and our community as well. We need to be providing educated experts to our doctors as resources, but we also need as a community to build each other up and know what we're putting in our body. So that way in the future, no one doctor, expert, or patient like Nick is ever dealing with addiction alone.